Hey, explorers. Welcome back to the channel where history, mystery, and faith collide. Let me ask you, have you ever heard a story so strange, so outlandish that you almost wonder if it's a hidden metaphor or maybe a riddle? Well, today, we're diving into one of the Bible's most unforgettable mysteries, a real-life king, one of the greatest in ancient history, suddenly crawling in the grass on all fours, eating with the cattle, his hair tangled and wild, his mind lost to the world. Picture it, the most powerful man alive reduced to living like an animal. Why would God allow that? And what lesson could possibly be buried in a tale so bizarre? If you're new here, or if you love unraveling ancient puzzles with us, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because today's episode peels back the curtain on the Babylonian Empire and reveals a lesson that still hits home in our world of power, pride, and second chances. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to the end, because the twist in Nebuchadnezzar's story might just change how you see yourself and the world. But before we can understand why a king ended up living like a beast, we need to walk through the golden gates of Babylon itself. Imagine this. Soaring walls glowing with blue tiles, every inch embossed with lions, dragons, and gods. The air is thick with the scent of incense and ripening dates, echoing with the sounds of haggling merchants, distant water wheels, and military parade drums. This is the realm of Nebuchadnezzar II, ruler of rulers, builder of wonders. Now, Nebuchadnezzar didn't just inherit a throne, he built a legend. Born into a royal family around 634 BCE, he was forged in battle and crowned in victory. His military campaigns are the stuff of legend, conquering Jerusalem, defeating Egypt, and stretching Babylon's borders from the Persian Gulf to the edge of the Mediterranean. His armies marched beneath banners of crimson and gold, carrying the emblems of Marduk, chief god of Babylon. But Nebuchadnezzar was more than just a warrior. He was a visionary, obsessed with leaving a legacy that would outshine even the pharaohs. Historians still marvel at the scale of his ambition. He rebuilt Babylon into the jewel of the ancient world, grand processional streets lined with lions, the famous Ishtar Gate shimmering with lapis lazuli, and if the legends are true, lush hanging gardens rising like a green mountain in the heart of the city. Archaeologists and scholars have debated for centuries whether those gardens ever really existed, but their image is burned into our collective imagination, a symbol of human ingenuity and excess. It's easy to see how a man with that kind of power and vision might start to see himself as more than just a king. Have you ever noticed how success can quietly whisper that you're untouchable, that you've earned every accolade, that you're the center of the story? Nebuchadnezzar's story asks us a question: what happens when pride and power go unchecked? What happens when a man who commands armies begins to believe he's a god? The Babylonian Empire wasn't just a backdrop for this king's ego. It was also the stage for some of the most dramatic moments in Jewish history. When Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem and carried the Jewish elite into exile, he set in motion events that would ripple through centuries of prophecy, faith, and resistance. Babylon became more than a city. It became a symbol, a place of testing, exile, and ultimately, transformation. So, as we follow Nebuchadnezzar's journey from power to madness and back again, keep this in mind. This isn't just a tale about a long-dead king. It's a mirror held up to our own hearts, a warning and a promise. Because the real question isn't just why God turned Nebuchadnezzar into an animal, it's what that ancient act means for every one of us who's ever struggled with pride, control, or the fear of losing it all. Ready to dig deeper? Let's step into the heat of ancient Babylon and see what happens when a dream shatters an empire's illusion. Night settles over Babylon, but inside the royal palace, sleep comes uneasily to the king. Imagine Nebuchadnezzar pacing marble floors, the city lights flickering below, his thoughts haunted by something he can't quite shake. Have you ever had a dream so vivid, so disturbing that it followed you into the daylight, coloring everything you saw? That's the crossroads where our story truly begins. Babylon, in Nebuchadnezzar's day, wasn't just a seat of government, it was the beating heart of the ancient world. Its walls, wide enough for chariots to race along the top, stood as a challenge to anyone who might dare oppose the king. The Euphrates River split the city in two, feeding lush gardens, fountains, and canals. Traders from Egypt, Persia, India, every corner of the known world flocked to its markets. Gold and spices, ivory and incense. This was civilization's apex, and Nebuchadnezzar stood at its center, his every word law. But behind the splendor, the king was driven by something deeper. An obsession not just to build, but to be remembered. He commissioned temples that touched the sky, monuments that defied time itself, inscriptions that praised his own might. Archaeologists still unearth bricks stamped with his name. For Nebuchadnezzar, legacy was everything. Yet power and pride walk hand in hand, don't they? It's a tale as old as humanity. For all his genius, Nebuchadnezzar was not immune. His victories filled him with certainty, and certainty unchecked can become arrogance. The higher you climb, the more dangerous the fall. But why does any of this matter to us, thousands of years later? Because Nebuchadnezzar's story shaped the destiny of nations and the faith of millions. When his armies crushed Jerusalem in 586 BCE, the Jewish people lost their temple, their city, their freedom. They became exiles in a foreign land, strangers surrounded by strange gods. The trauma of exile and the stories that emerged from it like Daniel's would influence prophets, poets, and reformers for generations. Babylon became a symbol, not just of oppression, but of what happens when humans forget their place in the grand design. This sets the stage for a confrontation bigger than any battle won between a king and the God of heaven. Let's rewind just a bit. Nebuchadnezzar wasn't new to the strange and the supernatural. If you flip back a couple of chapters in Daniel, you'll find a pattern. In Daniel 2, the king dreams of a massive statue gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay shattered by a stone not cut by human hands. The prophet Daniel interprets this dream. It's a prophecy about empires rising and falling, starting with Babylon as the head of gold. Nebuchadnezzar is impressed, even awed, but soon forgets the warning. Next comes the fiery furnace in Daniel 3. The king sets up a golden image and demands worship. 3 young exiles, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refuse. They're thrown into the flames, but emerge unharmed, their faith rewarded, and Nebuchadnezzar is left reeling once more. Each of these events is a nudge from God, a chance for the king to recognize a power greater than his own. Now we arrive at the heart of Daniel 4. Nebuchadnezzar is content and prosperous, his palace secure, his gardens lush, his legacy seemingly untouchable. Then the dream comes. He sees a tree in the center of the earth, tall, strong, its top touching the sky, visible to the ends of the earth. The tree shelters every creature, feeds the world, gives shade to all beneath its branches. But suddenly, a holy watcher descends from heaven. The command is clear: cut down the tree, strip its branches, scatter its fruit. Leave only the stump, bound with iron and bronze among the grass of the field. Let his mind be changed from that of a man to that of a beast, until 7 times pass over him. On screen, the words from Daniel 4:10-16 appear. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him live with the animals among the plants of the earth. Let his mind be changed from that of a man, and let him be given the mind of an animal, till 7 times pass by for him. Can you feel the tension? The dream is more than a warning, it's a mirror, showing Nebuchadnezzar exactly where unchecked pride can lead. And it's a question aimed at all of us. What would it take to bring us back to reality when we start believing our own legend? Nebuchadnezzar is rattled. He gathers his wise men, magicians, astrologers, anyone who might decipher the nightmare's meaning, but they stand silent, powerless. Finally, Daniel is summoned. This isn't their first encounter. Daniel, the exile with an unshakable faith and a reputation for solving the unsolvable, enters the throne room with a calm gravity. The king pours out the details, desperate for answers. Daniel listens, and his face grows troubled. For a moment, even he is silent. Imagine the tension in the room, the ruler of the world waiting on the words of a foreign captive. Finally, Daniel speaks, with deep respect but honest courage. "My lord," he says, "if only the dream applied to your enemies and its meaning to your adversaries." Then Daniel reveals the message. The great tree, vast and sheltering, is Nebuchadnezzar himself. The prosperity, the reach, the admiration of all nations, these are gifts, not entitlements. The Watcher's command to cut the tree is a divine decree. Nebuchadnezzar's power will be stripped away. He will be driven from people and live with the wild animals. He will eat grass like cattle, and his body will be drenched with the dew of heaven. The 7 times is a mysterious period years, perhaps seasons, but it will last until the king acknowledges that the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of men and gives them to anyone he wishes. Daniel 4:25. Daniel doesn't stop with interpretation. He pleads with the king, almost begs him to change course. Renounce your sins by doing what is right, and your wickedness by being kind to the oppressed. It may be that then your prosperity will continue. Daniel 4:27. Imagine being Nebuchadnezzar, hearing this from a man you've conquered, a man you could have executed with a wave of your hand. It's a rare moment of vulnerability and warning, a last chance. But fate, or pride, often dulls the edge of even the clearest warnings. 12 months pass. The king walks on the roof of his palace, surveying the city that his hands have built. The sun glints off blue tiles, the gardens overflow with life, and Nebuchadnezzar stands at the pinnacle of human achievement. Have you ever caught yourself basking in your own accomplishments, thinking, "Look what I've done. Look how far I've come"? The air atop the world is intoxicating, and that's precisely when the fall is most perilous. Nebuchadnezzar can't resist the urge to boast. He says aloud, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" Daniel 4:30. The words hang in the air, heavy with pride, almost defiant. No sooner has he spoken than a voice thunders from heaven. "This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you. You will be driven away from people and will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox. 7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes." The prophecy is fulfilled in an instant. One moment, Nebuchadnezzar is king of the world. The next, he is a beast, crawling on all fours, his mind shattered. His courtiers recoil in shock, the palace thrown into confusion. No one can help him. No one can reverse the judgment. The band of iron and bronze remains around the stump. The kingdom is not destroyed, only paused. The preservation of the stump is a sign that his story isn't over, that hope lingers even in exile. The image is haunting. Nebuchadnezzar, once clothed in silk and gold, now soaks in dew and mud. His hair grows long and matted like eagle's feathers. His nails curve and thicken like bird's claws. Daniel 4:33. He has lost his speech, his intellect, his pride, everything that marked him as a king. Yet, even in the madness, there's a kind of mercy at work. The kingdom is kept for him. The iron band restraint and promise prevents total destruction. 7 times must pass, a full measure of humility. And through it all, the world watches. What becomes of a man who loses everything, except the chance to begin again? Day after day, Nebuchadnezzar wanders the fields, indistinguishable from the beasts he once ruled. Rain and sun batter his skin. Grass stains his lips. Servants watch from a distance, helpless to intervene. Whispers echoing through the palace about the king who became an animal. The mighty monarch who once decided the fates of empires is now driven by instinct, ruled by appetites, surviving in the margins. Have you ever felt like life knocked you flat, stripped away everything that made you you, left you staring up from the lowest place imaginable? The Bible's language is striking here. Daniel 4:33 paints it vividly. He was driven away from people and ate grass like the ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his hair grew like the feathers of an eagle and his nails like the claws of a bird. There's no softening this transformation, no attempt to spare his dignity. He is undone completely. His mind, once brilliant and commanding, is clouded and animalistic. This isn't just a loss of power, it's a total reversal of everything he thought he controlled. And all the while, Babylon continues without him. The royal court must adapt, the city carries on, the river still flows, and the sun still rises over the Ishtar Gate. The world does not stop when we fall. Yet, the band of iron and bronze remains tight around the stump, a promise that this loss is not forever. 7 times, whether years or cycles pass, and Nebuchadnezzar endures each one in the wilderness. Now, let's imagine what those days were like: the humiliation, the hunger, the isolation. If you've ever been brought low by circumstances beyond your control, you may know a shadow of what he felt. But this is also where the story pivots. It's in the pit, not the palace, that Nebuchadnezzar learns the most crucial lesson of his life. Suddenly, the narrative turns. In Daniel's own words, recorded in Daniel 4:34-36, Nebuchadnezzar recounts, "At the end of that time I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes toward heaven, and my sanity was restored. Then I praised the Most High. I honored and glorified him who lives forever." The moment he lifts his gaze from the grass to the sky, something shifts inside him. It's as if humility has cracked open the door, and through it grace floods in. Can you see it? The power isn't in the king's hands, or in the city's walls, or in the legend of the hanging gardens. It's in surrender. Only when Nebuchadnezzar acknowledges a power greater than himself does his mind return. "My sanity was restored," he says. "My honor and splendor were returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. The courtiers who once feared and pitied him now come near again. His advisers and nobles seek him out. His throne, kept for him by divine decree, is returned." But Nebuchadnezzar is not the same man. The proud king who once strutted through the gardens now speaks with a new humility. "Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble." Daniel 4:37. That's not just confession, it's transformation. The story's arc rise, fall, restoration isn't just about a single man. It's about the pattern of pride and humility that runs through all of history and every human heart. In Babylon, the world's greatest king discovered that true greatness is not seized, but received. Not imposed, but surrendered to. Have you ever had a moment when life forced you to let go, to admit you weren't in control? What happened next? Sometimes the breakthrough comes not at our strongest, but at our lowest when we finally look up. Nebuchadnezzar's story is unforgettable, not just for its drama, but for the truth it whispers through the ages. The king, who lost his mind and power, who crawled through mud and grass, finds restoration only when he lets go of pride and acknowledges a power above his own. His journey is a stark reminder. Humility isn't a weakness, but the very door to renewal. So, what are we supposed to take away from all this? Why does this ancient story matter in a world of skyscrapers, algorithms, and Instagram followers? The answer is both timeless and urgent. Pride has always been seductive. It tells us we're self-made, that we've earned our spot at the top, that we're above correction or vulnerability. But Nebuchadnezzar's descent into madness reminds us, power, no matter how absolute, is fleeting. Life can turn on a dime. The very gifts we take for granted, success, health, reputation, can vanish in a heartbeat. The lesson isn't about fearing punishment. It's about recognizing reality. No matter how high we climb, every breath, every opportunity, every talent comes from somewhere and someone beyond ourselves. When Nebuchadnezzar finally lifts his eyes and praises God, he doesn't just regain his throne. He finds a freedom he never had when he clung to his own greatness. Think about it. Our culture celebrates the self-made legend. We scroll through endless feeds of people announcing achievements, flaunting lifestyles, curating the image of a perfect life. But the shadows linger: anxiety, burnout, the emptiness that comes when applause fades. Nebuchadnezzar's transformation speaks to anyone who's ever been tempted to believe their own legend, or felt hollow despite outward success. Maybe you've seen it in the headlines: CEOs toppled by scandal, influencers undone by a moment of arrogance, politicians whose pride led to public humiliation. But it isn't just for the famous. Pride can creep into any heart, ours, yours, mine, sometimes disguised as confidence, other times as the fear of losing control. The real miracle in Nebuchadnezzar's tale is restoration. It's never too late to start again, no matter how far you've fallen. Humility isn't about thinking less of yourself, but about seeing yourself clearly, knowing your strengths and your limits, acknowledging the sources of your blessings, and choosing gratitude over entitlement. That's where freedom begins. There's a challenge and a comfort in this story. The challenge: examine your heart. Where have you been building monuments to your own achievements? Where have you silenced the warnings, believing you're the exception? And the comfort: if you've crashed, if you've lost, if you feel broken, redemption is possible. In Daniel's words and Nebuchadnezzar's own confession, we hear it echo: those who walk in pride, he is able to humble, but he also lifts up those who are willing to look up and surrender. What does that look like in your everyday life? Maybe it means giving credit where it's due, listening more than you speak, or reaching out for help when you'd rather pretend you have it all together. Maybe it's forgiving someone who hurt your ego, or letting go of the need to win every argument. It could be as simple and as hard as pausing in gratitude each day, remembering you're not the center of the universe. So much of what's broken in our world, conflict, division, burnout, springs from unchecked pride. Nebuchadnezzar's story calls us to a different way: humility, gratitude, and the courage to start again. It's an invitation not just to avoid the pitfalls of arrogance, but to find the kind of freedom and restoration that only come when we stop clinging to our own little kingdoms and look up. Across the centuries, Nebuchadnezzar's story continues to echo, whether in ancient palaces or the crowded streets of today's cities. Maybe that's why this account made it into the heart of the Bible, why it's been whispered in synagogues and churches, debated by scholars, and pondered by everyday people seeking meaning in the chaos of ambition and defeat. Let's bring it all together. Nebuchadnezzar, the unrivaled ruler of Babylon, was brought low not by foreign armies, but by a force within and above himself. His fall wasn't the end of his story, but the beginning of his awakening. When all the titles and treasures were stripped away, when the world moved on without him, he found clarity in the quiet, humility in the dust, and the courage to lift his eyes beyond himself. And isn't that the heart of the lesson for us all? That life's truest power isn't about control, image, or dominance, but about recognizing where those things come from in the first place. Sometimes it takes a collapse to expose what really holds us together. Sometimes being brought low is the first step toward rising in a new and wiser way. There's a paradox at the center of this story. The strongest man in the world was never truly strong until he admitted he was weak. The king who ruled everything could not even rule himself until he surrendered to the one who rules all. And when he finally did, everything changed. His sanity returned, his honor was restored, and his words carried a different kind of weight. Nebuchadnezzar's testimony rings out at the close of Daniel 4. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble. On screen, that last line glows, an invitation and a warning. So, as you think about your own life, maybe ask yourself, where do I need to look up? Where am I trying to grip too tightly, to control what was never mine to command? Are there places I need to embrace humility not as a punishment, but as the doorway to a better story? If this tale challenged you or made you see something familiar in a new light, let's talk about it. Drop a comment below and let us know which part hit home. Was it the king's rise, his fall, or his restoration? Your story matters, and your insight just might help someone else on their own journey. Thank you for spending this time exploring with me, peeling back the layers of ancient Babylon, walking through palaces and pastures, and wrestling with a question as old as humanity itself. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join our community of explorers hungry for wisdom, for mystery, for the kind of truth that transforms. Until next time, keep seeking wisdom, stay curious, and remember, no matter how high you climb or how far you fall, there's always a way back when you choose humility. See you in the next adventure.